G'day and welcome. Today we're at the Mountain Culture Brewery in Blue Mountains, Australia. This is our man Scotty, and this is his insane custom bike that we're going to be chatting all about today. Now Scott, when most people buy mountain bikes these days, they come complete. I'm sure there's not a hardcore mountain biker out there that doesn't exactly dream about or fantasize about one day building their very own custom build completely from the ground up. Pick their ultimate frame, pick all their parts, the most expensive thing they can get, carbon fiber, titanium, all the bells and whistles, the latest technology. But mate, that's not how you approach this bike. And you've been riding for a lot longer than most, myself included, a couple of decades. Tell us a bit about the philosophy of this custom build in particular, Scotty.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're pretty lucky at Revo that, we get the opportunity to work with, a ton of different companies and a ton of different bike brands that would have, jumped at the opportunity to do a custom build. But I sort of approach this bike with more the mindset of, where I ride, who I ride with most of the time, the type of trails I like to ride. And that was probably my mindset when going into this custom build. And as you said, yeah, like budget wasn't an issue, parts weren't an issue. And, but all the bling sometimes isn't exactly gonna, suit, the type of riding I like to do anyway.
So talk about a purpose-driven build. You've not built the bike based off the coolest shit that everyone else wants. You've built a bike to suit the trails you ride the vast majority of the time.
Yep.
So tell us, what sort of trail? Are we talking like uphill XC trails?
Yeah, look, I mean, as you know, like the mag itself is a very gravity-orientated magazine. Me, myself, like background-wise, I mean, I raced downhill bikes at an elite level for, heaps of years and enduro racing and whatnot as well. So, but I mean, as we mentioned before in previous reviews, I live in the lower Blue Mountains. And as anyone who knows who's ridden our local trails, they're pretty steep, pretty gnarly, very gravity orientated. And, I wanted a bike that is really for those type of trails, but I wanted a bike that I could pack up if I want to go to Whistler or go to Derby or go to Thredbo, and have a bike that's super playful, but yet, burly enough to handle those sort of, that bigger terrain anyway.
Absolutely. One thing Scott maybe failed to mention is that the trails that we ride here are notorious little bike eaters. They will take a bike and chew it up and spit it out. And we apologise to all the brands that have sent us bikes for review here in the past and they've gone back with one wheel or half a frame to apologise. Now, Scotty, this thing is of course the new TR Transition Patrol. It's the latest generation of one of the most kind of loved bikes in their range. How did you come to sort of build or to start your build around that frame in particular, given that there are so many options on the market? This thing's obviously quite a newcomer. Tell us a bit about why you decided to tick this thing off.
Yeah, look, I've actually ridden a heap of transition bikes, and it's no secret that we have relationships with a lot of, good bike companies, good bike brands and whatnot as well. Me, myself and the mag have a very good relationship with the guys at Supersports, who are the importers for transition bikes. But to be honest with you, like when I first saw this bike about to be released, and especially the aluminium version.
When they teased it online.
They teased us online.
It was in that COVID bit where there was sort of, things were getting announced, but obviously stock was an issue, freight was an issue. This thing came out, it was a little while before it's in flesh though, right? Yeah,
but during COVID and whatnot as well, with how expensive bike, bike parts were and whatnot as well. And when I saw this, the angles, the travel, the style of bike it was designed for, it ticked all the boxes in relation to exactly the style of bike I wanted to build. And also the thought bubble came up. It's like, well, during COVID times, perfect opportunity to maybe do a custom build review. So that was where the idea came from anyway.
Awesome, mate. Give us a rundown of the, facts and figures of this bike. What are we talking travel-wise, wheel size, all of those kind of, in a nutshell, figures that people want to know?
Yeah, so the cool thing I like about this bike is it's an all-alloy frame. I went with an all-alloy build.
Front, rear, everything's alloy, hey, even the rocker.
Rocker, everything, wheels, bars, stem, cranks.
Even his brake levers are alloy. There's literally not one piece of carbon on this bike.
There's not a piece of carbon on this bike. And I did that, for a bit of fun, but I also did that for, performance reasons as well. Like, as JT just mentioned, like our local trails where I ride most of my time, it's like super brutal on bikes. And I really like the forgiving nature and how durable aluminium is as well. Plus, I kind of like the old school punk rock.
Does have a bit
to
of
an
that feel,
alloy.
doesn't it?
Yeah,
That like,
yeah, for sure.
I like it. This metal is real.
That's real, mate. That's real.
So here, hit us with the figures. How much travel does this thing have?
So funny enough, the Patrol comes stock with a 205 by 62.5 stroke shock, which gives you 165 mil of travel in the back. However, I put a RockShox coil in this with a 65 mil stroke, so it gives me 170 mil of travel.
So it pumps the travel up a little bit.
Pumps the travel, but you can do that with this bike and it doesn't void the warranty. So it's actually designed to take a 65 mil stroke shock as well.
Classic transition.
Yeah.
Make it ready to go harder out of the box than
Harder
most.
out of the box. So 170 mil of travel in the back. It's got a new 2023 Zeb Ultimate up front with a 170 mil with the new buttercups and that in as well. Like those forks are amazing. I've run heaps of Zebs, and obviously a SRAM as well and RockShox. We have a really good relationship with those guys. Blake and I, you know, a couple of the test riders, we have a really good relationship. So it was a bit of a no-brainer for me when I wanted to build this bike. I just wanted all SRAM parts and RockShox parts. I just like how they all gel together. And that's another reason why I sort of went into some of the other components as well, is I don't like to mix and match too much. I like all my components to really be neat and really gel together.
So obviously consistency of parts and have that harmonious, but obviously durability is the DNA of this bike. Now one thing when you look at the bike at a glance, it's got awesome clean lines, but it's also a member of the 2-cable club, just the brakes, everything else
Yep.
wireless.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, yeah, it's an old school bike with an old school look about it sort of thing. That's the idea. But I wanted to have sort of that new school element to it as well with the Axis. I've ridden a heap of bike with Axis. It works unreal.
Yeah,
so anyone who hasn't, like, who may have their sort of, naysayers saying, oh, Axis isn't that good. Axis is dynamite. It's so good. It works amazing. Grimy, muddy conditions, your shifting remains the same. There's that one cable less that you've got to worry about. And again, with the Axis dropper as well. So 2 cables, the bike's very quiet and very neat as well. And as far as maintenance goes, it's unreal.
And you charge the battery like once a month, you barely even give it a thought.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
you know, you
love
plug the battery in occasionally and the battery lasts for ages. So yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Mate, it's definitely a bike that captures a lot of attention. We had this bike in the magazine last issue. We had a ton of emails come in and social media crews hitting us up about it. Then a few weeks after that, we're down at Thredbo Cannonball Festival, and mate, the amount of people that are asking about this thing, the thing I think that really captures their attention is it's all alloy. Like we're saying, it kind of feels like we're in a bit of a carbon fiber mountain bike world now, but alloy is still very real, very prominent. I mean, you need to only look at, say, the Commensal factory race team. Those guys are blowing the pants off the world most weekends. So Scotty, when people are building their custom bike, obviously the go-to, you're gonna be thinking about your frame, you're thinking about your suspension, probably your wheels, maybe you'd be looking at some Axis wireless drivetrain stuff. So all those Gucci parts that are kind of quick to come to the front.
Yep.
But when you're riding, what are the things that make the biggest difference when you're actually talking about how your bike feels to you and what's holding you to the bike? Tell us a bit about that and what do you got set up on here?
Yeah, well, that's a very, very good point, and that's probably the most picky thing and probably the most overlooked thing when building a bike, and something I'm very particular about, and it's all my contact points. So grips, my cockpit setup, my levers, like I run my levers at 24 degrees, you know, how far in my levers come on the pull, my saddle, my shoes, my pants that I wear, the gloves that I wear if I wear gloves, and also the pedals and whatnot as well. So all those little bits that, especially like my grips as well, like all those little things that, you know, you hang on to the bike with. Like a lot of people don't, you know, pay that much attention to those that, oh, they're a pair of grips, oh, it's a seat, oh, it's a set of pedals, like whatever. But I tell you, if you get all those little things right, comfy shoes, comfy pants, comfy saddle, grips you really, really, really like. I run the DMR Death grips, I absolutely love those grips. You get all that set up really, really good. Trust me when I tell you, like not only will you ride better, but your riding experience will be remarkably better if you get all those contact points right.
Isn't it funny when people talk about a bike's performance, they think about suspension, they think about tyres, but really the most important area of performance is what's holding you to the bike, and that's going to dictate how you're able to navigate in the bike, how comfortable you are, where your thought pattern is it on the trail ahead, or is it on this bloody shoe keeps slipping off? So yeah, interesting point you just raised there is something that is a little overlooked, so definitely keep that in mind when you're building your custom bike. Now Scott, flat pedals. I know you do run clips sometimes, but you have the versatility between both. This thing's running flats right now, the bike's dusty. Mate, how does it ride? I guess that's the one thing that people really want to know. Like, tell us the personality of this bike.
Yeah, like again, I mean, the best way to put it, it's a lightweight mini downhill bike.
Killer.
If you know what I mean. Like, we were down in Thredbo for Cannibal. I punched a heap of runsies on Cannibal. Yeah, you know, like on some of those sections where you pin, like you are stretching this thing on some of those heavier lines. But how capable this bike is on some of those really fast, gnarly sort of descents is unreal. Big booters, rock gardens, especially those forks, like how well they track the ground, and that new Super Deluxe coil.
Yeah.
Like how well that suspension platform works. You know, RSC co-brakes, they've got heaps of stopping power, got a 220 rotor in the front, a 200mm rotor in the back, so maximum stopping power as well. So that's the best way to describe it, is a playful, lightweight, mini downhill bike, so to speak. So you can really push this thing, and as far as like hitting some of the, I mean, you're never gonna say, oh, I can't go ride that line because of this bike. It's pretty much, you can ride anything you can ride a downhill bike, you can, you know, ride this thing on. So that's probably the best way to describe it.
Mate,
plus it still pedals pretty well to the top of the hill.
I was just about to ask, with all these downhill capabilities you speak of,
Yep.
I know that you and the boys go on some hectic long ass rides.
Yep.
It's incredibly mountainous here, and it's not just all shuttles.
Yep.
It's a lot of self-propelled. How does it roll uphill? How is it for a 50k bash out?
Well, that's one little thing. I went with the Race Face Turbine 30 wheels. They do a 35.
These are slightly narrow ones, aren't they?
Slightly narrow ones.
Still
These are like
tough.
their trail enduro ones. So I could have gone with the bigger option, but a lot of people don't know this, but the best way to save or make your bike perform a little bit better is a nice set of wheels. Like the hubs and these wheels are bulletproof, but they're actually pretty lightweight and they do roll amazing. So you look at this bike, and it was a little bit in the back of my mind that when I put this together it was going to be a little bit weighty, but it's actually not weighty. It's under 16 kilos.
Under 16 kilos as it is?
As it is.
With all these parts?
Yeah. So,
Wow.
I mean,
That's
you
good.
put a drink bottle on it, you change your pedals, you change a few bits and pieces. The difference in grams does go up a little bit. But the last time I weighed this, I think it was 15.8 kilos. So it's under 16 kilos for that bike. So it's still pretty lightweight for what
Balanced.
it is. Yeah, it's balanced, yeah.
Now, one thing we haven't touched on yet, but I know you're quite particular about, but at the same time, it is such a pain in the ass changing tyres between
Yep.
rides just to suit your trails. You want something that you can just rock everywhere. What's your tyre setup? What's your go-to preference? Have you got like tubes in there? Have you got like little inserts? What's your setup?
Yeah, so I've tried inserts, I don't like them, and that's just me personally. I find the bike rolls a little bit better without inserts, so completely tubeless, and obviously I run Maxxis tyres. On the back there, I've actually got a DHF on the rear there now, but I do change a little bit with my combos, but for this bike here, I run an Assegai up front. It's got an EXO sidewall, and I actually run, I think it might be a double down sidewall, and I run a downhill casing on the back. So we do chop and change a little bit with our sidewalls, and we do chop and change a little bit with our tyres, but the main tyre combo I go for a bike like this is an Assegai in the front, and normally a DHF or a DHR Minion in the rear.
That's just the predictable setup.
Really predictable rear tyre, good under braking, they roll really good in the rear. The Assegai is probably a little bit more slower rolling tyre, so I don't like to run one of those in rear, especially with a 27.5 inch back wheel. But I do like that aggressive tread pattern and that larger contact patch in the front wheel, because especially the little wheel accelerates better, corner's amazing, but with the bigger patch on the front wheel and that aggressive tyre pattern, you can really tear through those corners, and you sort of know that your back end's going to give way before your front end. So you can really, pitch these things into corners and tight sections in, and you know it's going to hang on.
Predictable.
Yeah.
Scotty, I know you spent a lot of time working over the concept of this bike, playing with the idea of what you're going to get. A lot of the parts you had to wait for, the frame you had to wait for. So it wasn't something you just made a phone call and put together the next day. Now that it's come together, now you've spent a couple of months riding it, especially with the frame, is there anything, like any buyer's regrets, anything you feel you maybe could have changed up to improve performance? You really feel like you've knocked it out of the park? I know Transition's kind of dedicated mullet set up the Patrol is definitely an extremely popular bike. Are you a big advocate for just how good these bad boys are?
Mate, I'm stoked. Like, I mean, I know that might sound a little bit biased, but I did my research, and for anyone who is listening to this at home, like that's probably the biggest point. Is, you know, I'm pretty loyal to like certain brands that I really like, and you know, you should probably be the same way with your local bike shops and whatnot as well at home. But I did my research, I knew what I was getting, and that's the big thing. If you're sort of getting into doing a bike build and whatnot as well, do your research, speak to people who know what they're talking about, and when the bike comes together, you know, like I knew this would be good, and there's nothing really I've done with this bike that I've regretted. You know, because of that reason, I've done my research, so I knew it was going to perform. Sure, I've played a little bit with my bike setup and stack heights and brake and suspension settings, and you know, played a little bit around with my tyres and whatnot as well, but overall, mate, the bike's unreal.
Wicked. Well, there you go, guys and girls. Hopefully watching this has inspired you so that next time you're looking to upgrade your mountain bike, you don't just go straight for a complete. Maybe have a look at a frame only option, have a look at some of the parts you've ridden in the past you've really loved, do a custom. We're kind of coming out the back end of all this COVID nonsense now. Supply chain's starting to fix up. You can pretty much get what you want again. It's a great time to be a mountain biker right now, that's for sure. So next time you're in the bike market, check out a custom. Scotty has definitely knocked this thing right out of the park. Thanks for listening, and if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to our channel for plenty more.
Cheers.
You.